3D printing, I think, is something that over the last sort of 2 years, 18 months to 2 years, has really taken off globally. And Dubai itself has got a mandate to 3D print a certain portion of buildings, and there's certain milestones that we've got to reach over the coming years. And so it's become this epicenter for 3D printing, and it's attracting a lot of interest globally. I'm pleased to have esteemed panelists with us today who are experts in this field. And to start off with, I just want to kind of set the scene about where 3D printing is at the moment. So what are some of the use cases that they're being utilized for, some of the kinds of projects that you're using them on, and the advantages that you're seeing with 3D printing. So if we go to you, Benoit, first.
Yes, thanks a lot, Prakash. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Yeah, so as you said, 3D printing is taking off in a lot of regions. But we've been also, over the last few years, through a lot of interest and then a bit of a downfall due to COVID, obviously, but that's only part of it. I think there's been a lot of hype linked to the technology and, unfortunately, a lot of false statements or promises that were a bit too high for a technology that just started. But now, since last year, in a few months mainly, it's picking up quite a lot. I think we are seeing a lot of second generation development in terms of material, in terms of printing, so equipment. And I think people are starting to understand where the technology also can be useful. So we've seen, we're going to talk about it, but on-site printing a lot. Mm-hmm. We've seen off-site printing also. I think one of the direct target was the housing. And that's where people could relate to something they've seen for years and years. Yeah. So these are the main first applications where, let's say, a mainstream has appeared, is linked with housing.
And Mashael, is that something that you're also seeing from your perspective as a purchaser of this technology?
Yes, 3D printing today, nowadays, it's become more attractive than before, because I think even the people realize it more than before. They think it's something impossible and also costly. But now with the development and improvement of the 3D printing, it's not just a printer. It's a printer, material, software together. So now there is a mini development to make the 3D printing more affordable. For example, in our factory now we produce a local 3D printing material which with less cost, more than 50% than worldwide cost. So if you have a good price for the ink of the printer, that's enhance the 3D printing market to be used more than before. So in terms of the master planning, in terms of affordable housing as well.
And Luai, same question to you from your perspective. Where do you think 3D printing is, especially compared to traditional forms of construction?
Today, 3D concrete printing is really revolutionizing the way we work with concrete material. And it's very natural for a new technology to take small steps into becoming used on a larger scale eventually. But today we saw a lot of developments in the past 2 or 3 years. We saw a fully 3D printed building by Dubai municipality, 2 stories height. In Germany, there's 2 residential buildings that are also 2 stories height. So we are starting to gradually scale up the technology. And of course, we have a focus on on-site printing and off-site printing. So that's very good for the technology that we are able to address different applications and different demands using different technologies. And obviously, off-site manufacturing gives you the ability to really control your quality, to fully customize your products. And this is something that we did not know in concrete manufacturing before, where you're able to completely customize your product without the use of any mold, without generating any additional waste. And what we're moving towards today is printing using a more sustainable concrete mix, which means that we are not really using a traditional concrete mix that is quite, having a lot of amount of cement, which has a big impact on the CO2 emissions, but we're more moving towards a sustainable way of construction.
And it's interesting you mentioned offsite and onsite. All three of you are offsite manufacturer or offsite 3D printing. So let's talk about some of the advantages of doing it offsite rather than onsite. We go to you, Mashael.
Actually, it's dependent on the project. It can be offsite and inside. So we do both the offsite and inside. So each things have advantage and disadvantage. For example, offsite will be have the more cost, the cost for transportation cost and logistic, but inside maybe the cost is less. But also, in other hand, the weather can be affect the printing itself. So sometime in some circumstances we prefer the offsite than inside, and in other circumstances the other way around. So it's dependent on the project actually, as they mentioned also about the material itself. Yes, 3D printing material and also modular reduce the volume of the using the concrete more than 40%, and this is a huge saving in terms of money. Although the material itself, the price is different than the normal material because it's contain different recipe and content. But if you look at the project, you always should look at overall the project, and you can see 3D printing can print a piece of art which is never be done in the traditional. And even if you want to do it, the cost will be going up hugely.
Yeah. And similar question to you, Benoit. What do you think some of the advantages are over offsite compared to doing it onsite?
Well, I think we've had a lot of discussion previously on modular, and I think the journey is quite the same, even though for 3D printing we are at the start of it. But it's kind of the same advantages in terms of control. You control your environment, so you are sure about the quality. It's a process that you control also in terms of material coming in. So the whole process of construction is much more controlled in terms of waste. It's better in terms of complexity in what you can achieve. Also, I think the printers today that are on site have some limitations in terms of shapes and in terms of materials also to be used. So on site you will see much more complex shapes. And you will see also elements in terms of quality that are much better than what you would see on site. The purpose is not the same. We also do both, and I fully agree that we are exploring still both. I think in the technology, but clearly offsite has a link to modular in terms of advantages.
Yeah, and Luai, similar question to you. With the offsite sort of 3D printing and comparing that to modular, I hear a lot about the fact that if you're going to do stuff in a factory, then why don't you just do it modular and control it and bring the cost down? So what would you say to that?
Yeah, I tend to really be a supporter of offsite robotic 3D printing in comparison to on-site gantry printing. And there are many reasons for that. Let's talk about the offsite and disadvantages a little bit. So if you're printing using a gantry system on site, you have a lot of downtime. When you want to set up the printer, these are huge steel construction, steel frames that you need to be set up together. They weigh a lot. They need special foundations. So to set up the printer, you are consuming a lot of time, a lot of labor, a lot of cost. Putting the printer down, the same process. Shipping it to the next site also. So all of that you don't have with off-site robotic 3D printer. You have the printer set up in your factory. You can print day in, day out. If it's day, if it's night, you have a controlled environment. You're not affected by the temperature. You're not affected by the humidity. With the gantry printer, the problem is that there does not exist many locations around the world where the temperature and humidity and the weather conditions are stable. Let's start, if you imagine printing in a cold country in Europe, in Germany, for example, you cannot print in winter. You can only print during the short time period where the temperature is suitable for printing. The hardware is sensitive to the environment. The material is sensitive to the environment. And let's talk about humans spending, 3-4 hours outside in the minus 10 or degrees. It's not convenient, to be honest. So this is the problem with on-site manufacturing. With off-site manufacturing, you don't have that trouble. And in addition, of course, the gantry typically uses, or the on-site manufacturing typically uses larger nozzles, which reduce your ability to create more intricate and fine designs. Whereas with the robotic arm off-site printing, you have better control over the quality, the type of finishing that you produce, and obviously the productivity is much higher. You just print summer, winter, day, night, whatever you choose.
And you talked about a lot of the challenges with on-site and some of the benefits of off-site, but there's obviously challenges of printing off-site as well. There's regulatory challenges, commercial challenges, challenges with, and you alluded to this before in terms of the expectation gap. So if we're going to tackle all three of these, so let's start with the expectation gap. So what are some of the challenges with what people expect from 3D printing and what the reality is, and how are you trying to bridge that or assess that?
But I think the advantages of the on-site, and I think a lot of clients that we are talking to want to see it printed live where they want the building to be. So it's one of the major discussions we're having, trying to tell them, look, we will do it off-site, we will control everything, then we will transport and build it up in a certain way. I think there are challenges of building. I think the advantages of being directly on-site with a gantry, well, you can print directly a full house, and you don't need extra equipment much. Obviously, there is still a link with traditional, but that part visually is fast, and they see it printed directly. I think I totally agree with Luai. Nevertheless, the major projects that we are seeing, especially in the US, booming, are linked with on-site. And I think that's partly because of the requirements. So clients are asking simple things to print, and they are linking to affordable housing, as you were saying. And for affordable, on-site definitely today is still cheaper, but the requirements are not exactly the same. So I think that's where it's booming in the in the US, for example.
Yeah, and that's definitely what we're seeing, right? Is this perceived notion of 3D printing is that it's got to be done in front of your eyes, right? Otherwise, if it's done in a factory, people don't really care how it's been produced in the factory, whether it's been 3D printed and things like that. So it's that perception and the education for people to understand. Let's talk about some of the other challenges, Mashael, in terms of regulatory. So one of the things that I always hear when we're talking to clients and customers is that there's no codes or standards for 3D printing. So how are you trying to get over those?
I think this is different from country to country. So let me give an example for Dubai. I think they already announced the regulation of 3D printing and the mandate until 2030. So in Saudi Arabia as well, we already discussed now directly with the government and the authority. To be honest, Saudi building code gave a specification about the end-up result of installation and so on. It's never go about what's the way you build with it. So I think nothing will stop us to build as long as we are meet all the specification and the regulation standard of the Saudi building code, and even around the world. For example, today you can see some project built by precast, other project traditional, and others mini type, others stainless steel. Nothing stops them, but the most important things, it's meet the regulation and the specification for the building code.
So I think some of the challenges is the proof of that when it comes to 3D printing, right? So some like the structural integrity, the thermal efficiency and things like that. So with 3D printing, there's not enough historical data around to be able to prove it. So is that are you seeing some of those challenges where maybe not the getting the approval of the designs, but the approval of the built, the finished element?
Yes, you are absolutely right. So you mean even to approve it for the people, the community, that's something real and it can be used for building. So in this case, we already work with KAUST University in Saudi Arabia. So in order to work together to make sure KAUST is involved in all the process, and also Ministry of Housing, Ministry of Industrial, so and NEDLib, which is under the 2030 vision. We are trying to integrate and work together in order to be under the umbrella of all of them, to get the trust from the community when they want to use it and build it. And by the way, in 2019, I think, Saudi Arabia built already the first house printing and show and did a huge marketing in that. So this movement, it's strongly supported by the government. But in order to show the Saudi people that something can be trusted and use it in their own house, on building house or project, whatever. So we try to work under consortium with the government and the one of the best university in Saudi Arabia and the world in terms of technology and so on. And then we have a proof of concept of house. It will be printed soon, one in Riyadh and one in Jeddah, so you can test both different climate and weather. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And Luai, we're just going to wrap up so quickly. So we've talked about where 3D printing is and some of the challenges. Where do you think it's going? And what do you think we need to do right now to make sure that we get there?
For me, and quite frankly, the reality is that construction has been always lagging behind when it comes to technology and automation. And we are currently finally reaching that point where we're connecting construction and concrete manufacturing with automation, robotics, and digital fabrication. So this is the normal, I would say, movement towards the technology. And currently, we have a lot. We have seen around the world in different parts, Asia, Africa, US, Europe, Middle East. We have seen plenty of proof of concept. We know that it works. Today, the way that I see it is that initially it's been tested mainly on building and construction projects, but today we're really diversifying the use of the technology for other applications, such as infrastructure projects, cladding for facades, multiple more applications. And this is where I see the technology will grow, start to really become part of every concrete manufacturing industry. And really, we will eventually see a shift from the traditional concrete prefabricated manufacturing to more automated robotics and digital fabrication methods.
And Benoit, similar question. So where do you see the industry going, and what are some of the things that you think we need to do now to ensure these things to happen?
Okay, that's a very broad question, but no, I think that today we talked about the challenges. I think the regulations is something that is very important, and I have to say the municipalities here, for example, are very active towards that. So that will come very soon. I think the price also is still something that stops people, but it has decreased already tremendously. Now, as Luai was saying, we have so many proof of concept. I think is the step towards upscaling that we need to bridge now. But we have only touched, in the community, what we say, we've only touched the tip of the iceberg. There are so many applications that we haven't looked at yet. Yeah. Can be in marine, can be, you were talking about wind towers. It starts to pop out, here and there. Now, in terms of technology itself, does it link to digitization of the construction sector? Yes. Yeah. Does it help in reducing carbon footprint? Yes. Is it linked to we were talking about BIM and the new, like Luai was saying, new technologies? The answer is yes. So there are a lot of noble purpose behind that new technology, and I think we just need all to dance in the same room. It was said for modular earlier, but I fully agree. So from clients to municipalities to consultants to engineers, once everybody dances in the same room, well, you see very amazing projects coming in. So I think the future is bright. Yes,
I think so too. Yeah, and there's lots of exciting things happening.